Did you know that in the early days of the automotive industry, in fact, before the early days of the auto industry, engines that used gasoline were not the only way to make a car run? Yes, steam, gasoline, and even electric vehicles were common during the first halting years of the fledgling auto industry. In fact, that the first electric vehicles predated the auto industry by maybe 50, 60 years, number one. Number two, that in the early days of the auto industry, when gasoline was still novel and hard to get, the preferred transportation at that time for about the first 15 years of the industry was electric vehicles. If you think the EV1 was the start of the electric car industry in the United States back in the 90s, you are so wrong. And there was a moment in the 1970s that they had a moment. But what if I told you that by the turn of the last century, there were vehicles on the road that had a range of 100 miles, even before the Nissan Leaf. And it would take about 60, 70 years to get back to that. Remember this name, Robert Anderson. He's a Scottish inventor. There's not a lot of numbers around him, but here's the one that counts. Between 1832 and 1839, and this is even before the growth of the railroad industry, where roads were still a suggestion, and you didn't have any kind of national network to speak of roads between cities and villages and towns. This guy developed a working electric carriage. There's a lot of the electric vehicle industry owes its sustainability in the early days to a guy by the name of William Morrison. And if you're local in Iowa and that name rings a bell, it should. He is an inventor in Des Moines who developed an electric carriage. And his improvements is what made it possible. And this is between 1888 and 1890. His improvements included a more advanced motor, gear-trained batteries, and a steering instrument. His model, the Morrison Electric, became the first practical automobile built in the United States. I didn't say electric vehicle, I said vehicle. This predates Henry Ford by about 8 years in his quadricycle. That was 1896. Just so we're clear about that. Most of Morrison's place in history for electric vehicles actually comes from his innovations in battery technology. He patented various battery innovations and sold the rights to several companies. At the end of his career, Morrison, from Des Moines, Iowa, held at least 88 battery-related patents from the U.S. Patent Office. 88 related patents to electric EV batteries before 1900.